Welcome to online classes. I'm Shilpa, lecturer in DCME, working at Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Government Polytechnic, Karimnagar. In previous lecture, we discussed binary input-output functions, how the file can be stored in binary format in the disk, and how we can read the content of the file from the binary files. So that is, we can read the data or write into the binary format on the disk using read and write functions we discussed in previous class. In today's lecture, we are going to discuss the continuation of binary input output functions, and that is in read and write operations are using these read and write functions. We can write the entire data into the file, or we can read the entire data from the file. But if we want to read or write data character by character, then we can go for character input output functions, that is put and get functions. So in today's lecture we discuss how what is the syntax of this put and get, how these are used in the program, and also if possible we will continue with the constructors, what is meant by constructor, how they can be used. And previous lecture, as we discussed here, we are going to read the data from the keyboard using the member function read data here, and after that uh, by using by using um, here using the read data, we are going to read the data from the keyboard, and using the write data we are simply writing onto the output screen. Meanwhile, using here read item I dot read item I dot read data are going to read from the keyboard, and by using this file dot write, that is here the file is the object which is created for fstream class, that is for input and output both more in both modes, that is for input and output operations. So using this object, that is file, by calling the write function, okay, and by passing the address of the data which we want to send write into the file, and by specifying the size of that particular variable here, we are passing them as arguments to the function write. So here this write function write this particular variable onto the file. So here it performs or it sends the data from program to the file, and after that I want to access the data from the file using the read function. Again it is having two arguments, that is whatever it read from the file, it stores that into the item, that is the variable address, and thus based on the size of the variable it reads the content of the file, because here this file is the object which is created for fstream class. So it this read function reads from the file which she is opened, okay, and after that we are simply by calling the write data function we are displaying on the monitor. So this is program which we discussed in previous class, that is how the read and write operations can be used in our program. So now uh, we will execute this program. We will execute this program. So this is the program which is having three variables: name, code, cost, and read data, write data for reading and writing from keyboard and writing onto the monitor. So simply read data, cout, enter name, code, cost, and reading into appropriate variables name, code, and cost. and write data. Here we are displaying name, code, and cost by using some manipulators, because here the manipulators uses simply they modify the format of the output. And here, as I am creating array of objects for the class inventory, okay, and creating object for the fstream class, and using this object which is created for fstream, I am going to open a um, uh, uh, that is one file in both the modes, in and out modes. And here, for our understanding purpose, enter details for three items, because here I created an array of three. So it is ready to read the variable, that is name, cost, and price of three items. That's why details for three items we are displaying on the monitor, and after that, whatever we enter, those should be read into the appropriate data members of a particular object. So for that, here I am using one for loop and item of I dot read data. So the first set of elements will be stored as the values of item of 0, and the second set of elements will be stored as the values of item 1 and item 2, like that. Whenever the I is incremented by 3, now 3 is less than 3 is false, so it simply comes from that loop, for loop. So whenever it is reading the content, a set of elements from the key, that is from the keyboard, at the same time I am sending the variable which read from the keyboard into the file. So that's why here I am calling the function write. Simply it sends the variable to the file. So here I am passing the address of this variable and size of that variable, so that whatever we enter, that is the set of elements which we enter, will be automatical, that is by the second statement it will be displayed on the send to the file. And after that, after reading element or set of elements for the three items, here I am going to read the content of the file. So normally here when we write, always the cursor will be at the end of the file, but when we are trying to read the content of the file, again the cursor should be at the beginning of the file. So for that, here by calling the seek g function, that is 0, I am bringing back the cursor to the beginning of the file. And after that, on the monitor, I am going to display output. And of course, as it is we are created array of three elements, three objects. So here again we are using for loop and file dot read. I am going to read the set of elements set that is one after the another, and I am storing that into the item, and I am that is into a particular object, and by calling write data using that object, I am displaying them on the output screen. So whenever that I equal to 0, so it reads the object 0 data, the values of the member functions, and it's right on the monitor. Okay, and after when I equal incremented by 1, now for I equal to 1, again it read the values of the data members of item 1, and it displays them on the monitor. And I is incremented by 1, and now I equals to 2, and again it read the data member, that is the values of the data member item uh, 2, and displays on the monitor. So after completion of read and write operations, we need to close the file. That's why file dot close, we call that, and we returning 0. So let me compile the program. Alt F9. Now run the program. Enter name, item name, mm, C program, item 4, sum 105, and cost into 3. Again for the item of 1, that is for the second object. Again it is asking us to enter the value c plus plus 402 and cost 250. The second one OS and the code is 404 and the cost is again 200 like. So alt F5. See here, this will be the output C program. That is here, as we are getting this into a that is in a particular format as that is rows and columns. So that is happened due to manipulators, as we are used some manipulators at the time of writing the data on the output screen. We set the width, we set the precision like that. So that's why here the output is in a specified format. That's why we are able to see in a neat way as our output. So C program 105, this is the input which we have given and that is written into the file, and by reading the this particular data from the file, here it is displaying on the monitor. So this is the program and this like this we have got the output. Now what is character input output operation? So till now we read the entire line from the file, and if we want to read character by character, then there are some operations, input output operations, which are used to read character by character and which are used to write character by character. So that is, the file stream classes support a number of member functions for performing the input and output operations on files. So here one pair of functions put and get are designed for handling a single character at a time. So in order to read a single character at a time, we can use this put and get functions. And another pair of functions write and read are designed to write and read blocks of binary data. Already we discussed that. And here the put and get functions. The function put, simply put, means it sends or writes a single character to the as sorry associated stream. So it writes only a single character to the associated stream, that may be input stream or output stream. And the function get function reads a single character from the associated stream. It reads the data from either input or output stream. That is, normally here get means for from input stream only, input file stream only, and put to output file stream only. And the syntax or format for get is here simply the object which is created for file input stream class and dot, that is, as this get function is a member function, we need to call that member function using object only. So get is used to read the data. So how from where we can read the data from only the file input stream class. That's why using the object of file input stream class, that is in file dot, by calling this get function character star, it simply sends or reads character from the file. This reads a character from the input file, and likewise this is the syntax for put, that is put character star, and we need to call this put function from the are using the object which is created for file output stream class, that is out file. This writes a character to the output file, to the output file, and these functions handle the data in character form. If you observe this, in order to store 2594 into the in a binary format, if that is a character format, then directly if that integer is occupying 4 bytes of memory, 2594 will be stored as it is on the internal memory. If we are using if we want to store that in binary format, then this 2594 is converted into the binary format, that is zeros and ones, and if the integer occupies only 2 bytes of memory, then the binary representation of 2594 will be stored like this in the internal memory. So here figure that is figure 2 shows how an integer value 2594 is stored in the character formats and binary formats. An int takes 2 bytes to store its value in the binary form, irrespective of its size, and a 4-digit int will take 4 bytes to store in the character form, because here 2594 each is considered as the character, so that's why it requires 4 bytes, because each and every character requires 1 byte. So as it is treating that as character, so it requires 4 bytes of data in order to store this 2594 in character format, whereas if it has to store in binary format, the size and the that is size of the integer is 2 bytes only, that's why, and that is stored like that. So now we'll see one example program. An example program here, input output operations and characters, that is here we are illustrating how this put and get functions works on a file. So for that here we are simply using we are declaring one string by specifying some size, and we are going to read string from the monitor, and we are storing that into the variable string, and we are going to send or write this string to the file, and we are going to read the string from the file. So that's why here we created one object for the stream class fstream, that is for both input and output operations. So using that object, I call the member function open by passing the name of the uh, file, and by specifying the mode, that is both in and out modes. And here I am going to read the content of the file character by character. So for that, first I need to know the length of the string. So already in previous we calculated the length of the string. So I am using that length here in order to iterate the loop for loop, in order to access the access or read the character by character from the file. So for that here, for int I equal to 0, I is less than length I plus plus, simply put string of I. Okay, file dot put string of I. So string of 0, string of 1, string of 2, string of 3, like that, till the end of the string. It sends or writes that particular character onto the file, that is here text. So it will be repeated till the length of the string. It writes character by character onto the file which we open here, text. And after that we are again that is sending or making the cursor to be at the beginning of the file. So for that here we are calling cg of 0, that is for the file. So here the cursor will be moved to the starting or beginning of the file, and after that here we are going to read the character from the file. So for that again here we need to we need to go till the end of the file. So for that here we are using while file. So here this file is nothing but it simply detects the end of the file, and I am going to get character by character from the file, and I am storing that character into the variable ch. That's why here I declare the variable ch, and here I am displaying that character immediately onto the output screen. And this loop, that is file get char and cout ch, will be repeated till the end of the file. So likewise here we will get the entire content of the file character by character, or the or It simply displays, reads the character by character from the file and displays on the monitor character by character. So this may be the output will be like this. Enter a string. First it asks us if we enter C++ programming. I get directly first this is that is put or write into the file character by character, and from the file we are going to access. Okay, this is the program. So again now we'll try to execute this program. We will open Turbo C++ and we will write a program which use this put and get functions. Put and get functions. Mm, okay. Hash include as usual. IO string hash include new.h hash include string.h string.h in void main, because here we are going to find the string length using the function strlen. That's why we included that string length. Void main, void main, and declaring one variable string, that is the array of characters string by specifying some 30 string cat string and cout enter string enter a string enter a string and seen into appropriate variable, that is string string string, and find the length of the string using the member function len equals to strlen string length, and pass the string and create now object for fstream classes. Fstream file. Now using this object to open a particular file in some specific mode. Okay, text comma iOS scope resolution in as well as out. iOS scope resolution out. So in input and output modes, we are opening this file. Then for int I equal to 0, I equal to 0, I is less than length, and I plus plus file dot put string character by character. So that's why we are using string of 0 character by character. We are sending or writing into the file. Right. After that, it is till the end of the file read, and after completion of that, we are simply uh, sending or repositioning the cursor into the to the beginning of the file. So for that here we are using CG. So it simply reposition the cursor to the beginning of the file. And now I am going to read the content of the file line character by character. So for that here while file, so here the file detects the end of the file. Okay, and using this object I am calling the member function get. and whatever the character read from the file is assigned to the variable ch, and I am printing that on the output string, that is ch, that is cout. And end of this, um, and after that we need to close the file also. File dot close, and that's ch, and return 0. Okay, void, so nothing will be happen. Okay, this is the program. Now save the file. Put it dot cpp. To compile the program, Alt F9, address 5 and different symbol extreme. Extreme dot h hash include extreme dot h. Save the file, compile the program. Statement, sorry, length, okay, Alt F9. This is the error, so it will be missing this file dot close. File dot close. Now save the file. F save Alt F9, run the program and compile the program and run the program. Control F9. Enter a string. Um, oops. So here, what happened? Why we are getting this only? Because here it reads the space as the end of the file. So again, let me execute this. Alt F9, Control F9, enter string. Oops. True. C. This. C. That is the difference between that is reading the content of the file from using read function and get. So whenever there is a space, it treats that as the end of the file. Okay, end of the file. So if that is empty, it treats that as the end of the file. So we are getting only oops in previous case. If there is no space, so it reads the entire string. This is the main disadvantage with reading the data character by character. Yeah. So till now we discussed what is mean by and that is in previous lectures we discussed what is mean by file, how the file can be opened, how the file can be closed, and what are the different modes in which we can open a file, and how we can open a file in a specific mode in out or append or ate or binary like that. And also we discussed that is binary input output operations, how the data can be stored in binary format, and how we can read, and how we can use this seekg, seekp, telg and telp functions, what is the purpose of them. And also we discussed read and write operations, that is in order to read the data line by line, and put and get functions which reads character by character. So this is all about the files which we learned till now, and now it's time to move to uh, constructors. So what is meant by constructor? So constructor is a special member function whose task is to initialize the data members of an object of its class. That is here. That is in case if we are having some 100, that is if we created some 100 objects for a particular class, and using each and every object, if I want to initialize data members of that particular class into to a some variable value, that is by default, if I want to assign the data members as 0 for each and every object, it is difficult to perform or assign uh, or provide initial values for the data members using all these objects. For example, there is some one class, okay, and it is having two data members, that is x and y, okay, and I created some set of objects, that is 100 objects for the class, and initially I am going to assign some values for this x and y. If I want to assign the initial values for this x and y by all these 100 objects, I need to call, or I need to assign values using these 100 objects. So that is of course very difficult. So in order to overcome that problem, here we are discussing constructor. So a constructor is a special member function whose task is to initialize the data members of an object of its class. Though it is having we created some set of or hundred or thousand of objects for a particular class. Here, if we want to provide initial values for the data members for all these 100,000 or any number of objects, so we can go for these constructors. It is special because it has same name as its class name. Here, the first definition of the constructor is this is a special member function. Of course, this is a member function, but this is a special member function. So why we are calling this constructor as a special member function? Because it is having the same name as its class name. It is having the same name as its class name. That's why it is called as special member function. And one more difference is, that is why we are calling this as special member function. Normally, the member functions can be invoked by the object or can be called through the object which is created for the class, but here the constructor of this special member function invokes automatically whenever a new object of its associated class is created. Whenever we create an object for that particular class, it automatically invokes the, or it automatically calls the constructor. So explicitly we need not to call the constructor. That's why again it is a special, because it is different from the member function. It is different from the member function, and it is called constructor because it constructs the initial values of data members and build your our programmatic object. So why we are calling this as construct? Because here these constructors constructs the initial values of data members. So they construct memory, or they assigns memory, or they creates memory for the data members, and also initialize when the data will be created. If it consists any value, then only the data will be created. Until and unless a variable is having some value, the data will not, the memory will not be reserved, or they may not be initialized. Whenever we declare a variable that is like int a, it simply reserves that 2 bytes of memory for the variable a, but that is not initialized to that variable. Okay, but here whenever we use these constructors construct the memory, or builds the memory for the data members. So that's why they are called as constructors. And it is very common for some part of an object to require some part of the object to require initialization before it can be used. So in many situations, we need to assign assign some values or initialize values to some part of an object. So then we can go for constructor. That is, here suppose you are working on hundreds of objects and the default value of a particular data member is needed to be 0. So we created 100 objects, and one data member value should be 0 for all these 100 objects. So in that case we can use these constructors. Initializing all objects manually will be very tedious. So that is very complicated. So instead you can define a constructor function which initializes that data member to 0. Then all you have to do is declare object and construct will initialize object automatically. So if that is the case, then we can go for these constructors, because whenever we create an object, it automatically invokes or calls the constructor, so that here the constructor is initialized value of the data member to 0. So whenever we create the first object, automatically the data member value is 0 for that object. And when we create another object, that is object 2, again that particular data member value is initialized to 0 for that object. And for object 3, when we create an object 3, again the data member value is initialized to 0. So like that, here, though it is having some hundred of objects, we need not to explicitly assign that particular data member value as 0. That can be automatically initialized using this constructor. So this is the main use of the constructor. So for example, here we are having some class that is with the name add. So first thing we need to remember is that should be that is constructor should have name as its class name. So in this case, the name of the class is add, and here it is having two data members, that is m and n. And in public, I am using one function with the same name as the class name, that is add. So I can call this as the constructor. This as the constructor. And whenever if I want to declare or define this add function, or sorry, add constructor within the class, here I can define its body. If I want to define this constructor out of the class, so uh, normal syntax, that is how we can declare the member function out of the class. We need to follow for defining the constructor out of the class. So this is the same syntax. The name of the class, scope resolution, name of the function. But here this is a special member function, that is add, and here we are initializing values 00 to the data members m and n. M and N. So this is the definition of the constructor. So when a class contains a constructor, it is guaranteed that an object created by the class will be initialized automatically. So yeah, that data members will be initialized automatically, and the constructor can be called when we create an object for that. That is example here, add a. So this is the object which is created for the class add. So above declaration not only creates the object a of type add, but also initializes its data members m and n to 0, because here we have defined the body of the constructor as m equals to 0 and n equals to 0. So that's why when we create an object for the class add, so it automatically creates an object, of course, and along with that it assigns zeros to the data members m and n, m and n, and here there is no need to write any statement to invoke the constructor function. If you observe the previous example, so here we need not to, that is if this is the this particular statement is written in the main, it automatically invokes the body of the constructor. We need not to invoke it, that is explicitly. There is no need to write any statement to invoke the constructor function. And if a normal member function is defined for initialization, we need to invoke that function for each and every object separately. So if that is normal member function, then we need to call that member function for each and every object separately to get the initial values of the data member. But that can be overcome with the constructors. And a constructor that accepts no parameters is called the default constructor. Okay, if we are not passing any arguments to the constructor, so that is a special member function, then that is called as default constructor. The default constructor for class A will be a scope resolution A, that is in previous example, that is add. So this is also a default constructor because here we are not at all passing any arguments to the function add, that is constructor add. And when we are using these constructors, so we need to remember some characteristics. Okay, and first one is always the constructor is a special member function whose name is same as the name of the class. That is the first point we need to remember about the constructor. And after that, when we are using or we want to make use of the constructor, then uh, that can be automatically called when an object is created. Explicitly, we need not to call that using a object. That is that we need to remember. And here there are some other characteristics of constructor, and here they must be declared in the public scope only. So when we are using these constructors, they should be declared in the public scope only. If we are defined in private, of course the private member functions cannot be accessed, and they can be accessed through only the public member functions. So whenever we create an object for the class, normally the constructor should be invoked. So if we are defining that constructor in the private, that is not accessible in the main, so that here we cannot make use of or we cannot invoke the compiler cannot invoke the constructor implicitly automatically. So always we need to declare the constructor in public scope only, and they are invoked automatically when the objects are created, of course, and they do not have return types, not even void, and they cannot return values. So whenever we are using this constructor, this is special member function. Normally the member functions can have return type, and the member functions can return the value as its return type. But if that is a constructor, and this constructor should not have any return types, not even void, and they cannot return values, and they cannot be inherited, though a derived class can call the base class constructor. So here if we are using this inheritance concept, though a derived class can call the base class constructor, but it cannot be inherited. That means a copy of the constructor cannot be copied into the derived class, but here we can that is the copy of the base class is not written into the derived class, but this derived class can call the constructor of the base class. Normally, when we use this inheritance concept, all the properties of the base class should will be come into the derived class, but here they will not come. The constructor will not come to the derived class, but it can make use of the base class constructor in derived class. That's it. And like other C++ functions, constructors can have default arguments. Okay, like other, that is even some functions can have default arguments. So that is what is the use of these default arguments. Whenever we are calling that function without some without arguments, then that is these default arguments will be assigned to the variables. Okay, so like that, here even the constructors can have default arguments, and the constructs cannot be virtual functions, and even we cannot refer to their addresses. We cannot use the we cannot refer the addresses of the constructors, and an object with a constructor cannot be used as a member of a union. Even normally the constructors can be other functions can be a member of structures or unions, but here the constructors which consist of the sorry, an object with a constructor cannot be used as a member of a union. If that object is having constructor, then that should not be a member of a union. And they make implicit calls to the operators new and delete when memory allocation is required. So that is here when we are using these constructors. So when that is example, when we create an object for a particular class, that is add a, then it creates the object a, at the same time it creates memory for the data members. Okay, that means here dynamically it allocates memory for the data members using that object. That means here implicit, that they call implicitly the operators new and delete. What is the use of new operator here? New operator is the one which is used to allocate memory dynamically, and delete is the operator which is used to deallocate the memory which is created by the new. So here they make, that is here the constructors make implicit calls to the operators new and delete when memory allocation is required. Even the constructor function is responsible for creation of object. That is, we have not defined any constructor in class. That is, though that is in till now we have used some classes without any constructors. Explicitly, we cannot see the definitions or declaration part of the constructors in our programs, but each and every program in C++, that is which consists of a class, are having some default constructor. Though we are not specified explicitly, the compiler takes default constructor as part of the class. So, but in previous examples, we have not defined any constructor in class. So, how come the objects were created of those classes? So, here the answer is, if no constructor is defined in the class, in such situations, the compiler implicitly provides a constructor which is called as default constructor. Explicitly, till now we are not at all written any constructor, we are not at all used any constructor in our programs, but here, though we are not at all used this constructor explicitly, the compiler implicitly creates an constructor for each and every class. If our program is consisting of a class, definitely that is having one constructor, that should have one constructor, that is default constructor. If explicitly we have provided, okay. If you are not specified explicitly, then implicitly the compiler will create default constructor for that particular class. Okay, so though in previous examples till now you are not at all use this constructor, definitely each and every class is having implicitly a default constructor. So till now we discussed the, that is character, input output operations, put, get, and also we have observed one example program for that, and after that we started a new topic, that is constructor. In that constructor, what is mean by constructor and what is the use of constructor we discussed, and also we discussed what are the characteristics of the construct. Thank you.